why don't you tell us what is sozo?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sozo is just a fancy word for inner healing. It's actually the Greek word that the Bible uses, that Jesus used for saved, healed, and delivered. It's the full package of what Jesus paid for. And so it includes your heart and your mind and your body and your soul and all your relationships and your finances and every part of life.
Yeah, well, these are really deep words. I'm sure people are curious. What does a sozo look like? How do you do it?
It's basically leading somebody into an encounter with the Lord and a conversation with Him. And yes, God wants to talk to His people, and He said His sheep hear His voice. And it's in an intimate conversation with Him that healing happens. Because we can use our minds to gain knowledge and insight, but it's only through revelation that real change happens. And I'm sure most people listening to this podcast understand a revelation and how it differs from just information. Yeah. And so a sozo facilitates that revelation time with the Lord, where He goes to the heart of what's happening inside a person's heart and brings healing. And for my situation, He showed me where my dad's heart was at the night that he felt like his life wasn't worth living, and where the Father was for me and my sister and my mother. And He showed me that He had these big wings wrapped around us and said that He became my Father that night. And it brought such healing. I was able then to forgive my dad.
Well, that's so powerful, because almost every time we develop those lies that are causing a lot of issues in our lives, the moment we develop those lies is when the trauma happens. When the pain comes, that specific moment, something shifts in us usually, and we start believing these lies. Yeah. And then we start building something on top of those lies, and we make a lot of decisions, and end up in a lot of more pain, actually. So you're saying that going back to that moment and seeing Jesus, that He was actually covering you in your pain, changed a lot of stuff in you.
Well, I always tell clients that it's not the situation that causes the problems later in life. It's the conclusions we come to from the situation, and then whatever things we create to manage our conclusions that cause us long-lasting problems. Yeah. So for me, it was abandonment and fear of being on my own, because the person who's supposed to be always there decided to leave.
That's true.
Leaving me vulnerable. So when the Father showed Himself to take up that role, I felt safe, that He's watching out for me and that He never abandoned me and never will.
Yeah. Was there any forgiveness process in this? Because I know in Sozo, forgiveness is one of our spiritual foundations. How did the act of forgiveness land on your specific situation?
Well, it was hard for me because I felt like it was disrespectful to be angry with my dad, because my pain was 9 years old, not the 30-year-old that I was at the time. Yeah. And so I had to overcome that obstacle and get permission from God that it was okay that I was angry. Angry wasn't the problem. And so then I could feel the anger, then I could release the anger, and I could forgive my dad for making those choices. It also helped that God showed me my dad's perspective.
I think that understanding, which is partially true. I mean, I remember my very first Sozo session when I was forgiving my dad. I felt the same way. And like the person who was leading my Sozo session, and this is my very first introduction to Sozo. I had no idea what Sozo was at the time, so someone is giving me a Sozo. A team came to our church actually, and then they said, like, this is an inner healing ministry. Like, do you want a session? I'm like, yeah, of course, we're gonna get the session. So this person is giving me a Sozo, And he says, repeat after me. So I'm repeating, Dad, I choose to forgive you for this and that. And he said a lot of stuff. And then at the end, he said, Dad, I choose to forgive you for not loving me well. I opened my eyes and said, I don't think that I want to say this. He goes, why? Well, I know that he did his best. He did not intentionally not love me well. So he didn't know any better. And this person goes, well, okay, tell me, how did you feel when you saw your dad angry? I said, when you were a little boy, I said, I was scared. He goes, how did you feel when you saw your dad in a lot of pain? I said, well, I was sad for him, but I knew that he could have done a better job and he didn't do it. He said, yeah, this is why you get to forgive your dad. And this is not about the person. This is totally about you. You're releasing yourself from the pain, from the impact of your dad's imperfection. I'm like,
that's good.
Wow. I said the same thing. And that was the very first moment that I was able to forgive my dad. And in fact, I even preached about forgiveness. I'm like, I forgave my dad. I forgive these people. Like, Christians don't hold any bitterness, anything. Like, you should forgive, right? Mm-hmm. But usually the case is in your head, you probably believe that you forgave, but in your heart, the heart is keeping the pain.
Right. I didn't even know I was mad.
That's true. Mm-hmm. Because your thought, your idea about like forgiving is disrespectful was a blockage for that. It wasn't letting you feel.
Right.
Yeah.
The anger that was in there.
Yeah. So you're saying when you faced with the anger, when I say face, when you realize that the anger was there, when you acknowledge that fact, then the freedom was able to walk in.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.